What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am super stoked for the long time coming guest, James Richardson, the biz buying Brit, as he goes by. We've been trying to get this on the calendar and worked out since almost like the beginning of this podcast. So I'm really happy that we finally were able to make it happen. So James, if you can, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about your family and tell us about your, in your case, businesses.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Very excited to be here. And yeah, it has been I think over a year we've been trying to get together. So this is quite funny, but I'm glad it happened. So yeah, James Richardson, the business buying Brit, as you said. I live in Franklin, Tennessee, and I'm married to Jordan. So we've been married 7.5 years, and we have 3 children. So girl, 5.5, boy, almost 4, and boy, almost 2. So very full household. It's a lot of fun. Definitely family focused. I know we're going to unpack some of that, here today. But I love my family. They're awesome, and I feel very blessed to have them in my life. And it's more. I love what I do for a living. We're probably going to talk about that as well. But my family is far more important to me than all of the stuff that I do, like all of the fun stuff I do for work.
Welcome to the BizDad podcast, where we dive into the melding of fathership and entrepreneurship with your host, the original BizDad himself, Adam Labar. Adam is a Christian, a former Air Force officer, a dad to 3 amazing kids, a coach, a real estate investor, and a business owner. On this podcast, he'll explore the unique journeys of amazing dads who are striving for greatness in both business and family. So whether you're a dad who is an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a man striving to be a better dad, get ready as the BizDad brings you conversations to inspire, challenge, and equip you to be a better dad and entrepreneur. And now, here's Adam.
So tell me about your businesses, right? How did you get kind of started doing what you do here?
Yeah, so for a living, I buy businesses primarily from retiring business owners. I started doing that earlier in 2022, so this is my 3rd full year of doing that. I always wanted to do this, and I actually always wanted to do this before it was really popular online and people were always talking about buying businesses. Something about my experience and professional experience working in the Big Four. I worked in the Big Four, PricewaterhouseCoopers. So it's one of the world's largest professional services, financial services, accounting firms. And so I think it was an amazing experience, but I always felt like the businesses I was working with were large, faceless corporations with people who ultimately didn't care. It's full of those people. Whereas, I'd meet a small business owner who was just put his heart and soul into building something. I would always get excited by those guys. And I think I just thought, I would love to move into this more small business space and work with real people who are really building stuff passionately. And then I always thought there was this wave of being able to buy businesses, and I wanted to do it. And I guess it took me a long time to pluck up the courage to leave my career to do it. But I started doing it 2.5 years ago, full time. I handed my notice in the same day I bought my first business. It's been a wild ride. I really enjoy what I do. We have several businesses now that we've purchased or currently oversee. And I teach people as well how to buy businesses now. After I'd done my first couple, it's somewhere between business or transaction 2 and 3, I started teaching because I'd done one transaction really badly and one transaction really well. And so I'd kind of figured out this is how you do it and this is how you don't do it. And so now I teach other people. So it's been quite fun now, helping other people leave their jobs and buy businesses and do this for a living too. Yeah. So I don't know what you call that, but that is kind of what I do day to day. And it's a lot of fun.
Well, I think I would call that, and maybe you can coin this, I would call that the business buying Brit. That's what I would call it.
All right, I'll write that down.
You're free to take that if you'd like. It's yours. It's on the table if you want to use it. But that's awesome. I'm looking forward to digging in that a little bit more. But before I talk about that, I want to rewind because you have an accent that I think it's not Philly. I can't pick it out necessarily, but you got an accent. So tell me about growing up as the Brit that you are. What was that like? Tell me especially about your dad, kind of what it was like being raised by your dad growing up.
Yeah, so it's amazing how many people ask me if I'm Australian. I don't know. I don't know why, because I live in Tennessee, and so there's a lot of. I think this is the case in a lot of America, but there's quite a few churches that are led by Australians. Our pastors are actually Australian at the church I go to, so maybe it's part and parcel of that. But anyway, I grew up in England, south of England, just south of London, about an hour south. So it's still commuter territory, just. If you go much further south, you get into the French-English Channel, but like really at the bottom of England. I lived there. I moved to America when I was late 20s, and I was just moved with my job from London to New York. But like I grew up, I'm very blessed by my family. I have my mom and dad still together. They've been married 40 something years, not sure exactly how many years. But I'm one of 3 kids, and I had a very, very stable upbringing, I would say. There wasn't too much. I think as I got older, I had to become familiar with like other people's upbringings, which is like maybe more typical. But I had a very kind of stable, and was also brought up in the church. So I feel like I gave my life to the Lord at a young age, comparatively, especially in England. I mean, it's super weird, I think, in many ways to be a Christian in England. But I consider that a huge blessing that I was exposed to that from a young age. And so, we can jump off in lots of different places in terms of like my entrepreneurialism and my business stuff, which I love. But like I didn't grow up around much of that. But what I did have modeled to me from a young age is like what a stable, like good home looks like, with love in it and support. And like even I think there's something I really miss about England, honestly, because I do love America and I am an American now. But something about in England, people have less, I think, materially, and the houses are smaller and the communities are tighter. So I grew up in a village where we had a lot of good friends, and wonderful like godmothers and other people in our lives and grandparents who were just like, we're all really tight knit, and we'd share meals together and do all of this stuff. And I do think sometimes in America, as much as I love this country, because we live in McMansions, spread out, everyone's driving everywhere, it's not walkable. Yeah, I do sometimes miss that. But like that was part of my story and my upbringing, which I, carry with me to this day. And many of those things I try and implement into my own family and my parenting now.
Yeah, it is one thing that it's we're very spread out, right? So obviously England's a lot smaller of a country, so the population density is a lot higher. Where we're here, we're really spread out, and we're all about conquering new challenges and spreading our wings and getting kicked out of the house at 18 years old, and going and accomplishing some task in some place, or traveling to some faraway land or doing something. And that's just kind of what America's been grown on, right? So it is very, very different, I would imagine, culture wise as a shift. But you moved from London to New York City, right? Is London, I would guess, is the largest city in England, and then coming to New York City. Like, how was that kind of transition for you, kind of coming through? And what did your parents think about you jumping ship, considering you came from that tight knit kind of community and family, to then just up and leave to the place that kicked you guys out 250 years ago? See, I had to throw that in.
Yeah, I know. I saw it. It didn't go unnoticed. I do know one thing my parents told me is growing up, they raised me to have a strong base, but also wings. They wanted a base and wings model. So, and I do think that I felt that, because I do feel very connected to back home. Like, I don't see us moving back home, like who knows, but back to the UK, but it could happen and I could slot back in, I think. Although I don't know if England would know what to do with my American ways now in terms of business. But yeah, I was always very independent. I'm the oldest, and so I was always, backpacking solo, or I hitchhiked to Morocco once from England. Like all these kind of random, crazy challenges that other people would think is a bit odd. But I did a lot of travel, and so I don't think it was strange when I was in my late 20s, single in London, and I was offered, work said, hey, we want a couple people to go to New York. And I said, please, can it be me? Like, please, don't interview anyone else. I want to go. And so, yeah, I left. I really didn't have very much. So I just moved to a studio apartment in the East Village in Manhattan by myself. And London, by the way, to your earlier point, is the economic engine of England. Like, really is by far. Like, they're trying to, bring larger amounts of commerce and business to some of the other cities, and like, it is there, of course, but London is a powerhouse, and the other cities are not, in the same way. So yeah, major financial center London to major financial center New York, and New York was like crazy. Like, I just like, wow, I'd never been to a city like this before, and the amount of wealth as well, because given I'm into business, it kind of blew my mind. Like, I started to make friends who worked at hedge funds and private equity in a way that I'd never experienced before. And the more we talk, I'm like, my brain is just firing on all cylinders. Like, wow, the amount of opportunity that exists in America is unbelievable. And I already like this country. People are friendly. People are just like, I don't know, like, there is pro-business, and I don't think I appreciated the freedom initially, but I've grown to love the kind of that as well, like the kind of lesser government side of things that we enjoy in this country. Like, it took me a while to get on board with some of that stuff, but something about it enticed me, and I've just grown to love this country, and now it is home. So I don't know where you want to dive into on the moving part, but I definitely moved by myself, and that wasn't an issue at all. Like, I love those challenges. I just go on like a friend offensive. Like, I joined a church that first week, and I went to a bunch of socials, and I went out with work colleagues, and I did like everything just to meet people, because I literally knew no one.
Yeah.
And a couple of people knew other people in the city, so I was just trying to, like, it's almost like a game. How many friends can I make in the first like 6 months? Like, let's go kind of thing. So it's probably the personality you need if you're going to move to a city by yourself and not know anyone.
Especially a city like New York City, right?
Yeah. I did meet my wife there that same year. I moved 2015, and later that year I met Jordan and was like, okay, you're amazing, and I will stay in this country for you. Because at that point I was on a loan agreement, and I was scheduled to go home. So, I mean, she's amazing, and it was a done deal at that point, I think, when I met Jordan.
Yeah, I would hope she's amazing. You married her, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
Hopefully you chose the right way to do that. Yeah,
it would be pretty awkward if I was on this podcast and I didn't think that. So,
so there, I actually want to pull apart a little bit. You said that it took you a while to get on board with the less government side of the house. Explain to me what that meant. Like, what kind of feelings did you have from where you were in England, and then what you saw as a contrast here? How did that juxtaposition kind of work for you, and how did you get on board with it more?
Because right now I run a community called the Inner Circle, and so I help people buy businesses, right? And so within my community that I help lead, I have people who are strongly left and strongly right, and I don't care what your political views are. I respect the right for you to have an opinion, and I will help you buy business. So I try to not talk too politically. However, when I came to this country, I was very strong on the bandwagon of, I am a Democrat. I like Obama. And when 2016 rolled around, which was only 1 year after me being there, I was like, man, Hillary Clinton is the obvious choice for president of the United States. Now, if you'd broken down why I thought that, it was, I believe some of the rhetoric around the scaremongering around Donald Trump, I think on the, as a lot of people did. But I think I would have said I was a liberal because I believe in people's freedom and right to choose how to live, how they want to live. And so the Democrats represented, you can live however you want and it's fine, we won't get in the way. And I guess I didn't quite understand that over time. I was like, the Democrats, in my opinion, have become the party of, they are, I'm trying to say the right thing here, like, it's all well and good, and they're the party of kindness as long as you believe what we believe, and if you have a different opinion, they, at least in the last few years, incredibly intolerant of people who have different opinions. And actually I realized my freedom views, which I was packaging up as liberalism in my head, is actually pro-freedom, which is very Republican, which is, we want less government intervention. We want to, the Constitution exists to protect, the underdog. That's the whole point of having a constitution. That doesn't exist in the UK and other countries. And actually, yeah, there's various things we could jump into around some of the things that happened through COVID and other things. Like I just shifted. I was like, whoa, hold on a minute. Like what I thought I wanted is actually represented on this side. And I've lent much more into that side.
Yeah.
And I like, obviously being European, I have a lot of family members who are completely on the other end of the spectrum.
Of course.
And so, that's me though.
Yeah. I think that it seems to be the trend oftentimes in a lot of the European countries, just because of the direction that they took, that they've taken for a while, is much more on the left-leaning side of the house. But they don't come from we have a very unique thing called that Constitution that you talked about, where it's all about, like there's a lot of self-responsibility and limited government. And when you're talking about the amendments of the Constitution, that's basically saying these are the limited roles of the government, where a lot of other countries, like we lived in Japan for 3 years. And where we basically say here in America, like, you're allowed to do anything that you would like, and the government is restricted with these amendments. This is all they can do, and you can do whatever you want. Where in Japan, it's more like, we will give you the right to do certain things, which is often the case in a lot of different countries, right? So like it's a weird dynamic to kind of walk through. So obviously, somebody coming from Europe or even a lot of parts of Asia are going to be very confused by this this constitution that we have and the freedom that we have, and I think that's why we are. And I think it was before we started recording, you and I were talking about how the differences. Oh no, it was still while we were recording, but the differences in the drive of how the two countries look at each other too. When you look at the way England is, but yeah, it's funny to hear the difference between those two the two countries, and I would love for you to just kind of keep on diving into that, just for my own edification at this point.
Yeah, and they do, and I wonder to what extent is that linked with the fact that it's almost like a post-religion society. Yeah. Like I know that the Catholic Church is big in Europe. I know that there are, the Anglican Church is not big, but it's there, it's established in the UK. But I do wonder to what extent almost the fall in religion has gone with not the worshipping of government, but everything is like, we look up to the government for everything. If the government says it, it must be correct, like as if the government has never lied before or had scandals or hides things, Yeah. It's just interesting. And then it's, you track I used to think that, like if the NHS, the National Health Service, says like this is healthy for you, it must be healthy. Like I don't know why I didn't challenge that when I lived there, but you are the product in some ways of the culture you grew up in. And so I used to think that. And now I think there's plenty of evidence to say that the governments lie to us, like yes, in Europe, but also yes, even in the US as well. It definitely happens here. And so like it's, you don't want to swing so far that when someone tells you like, this is for your best interest, you're like, well, you must be lying. But it's useful to bring a questioning mindset to it. Be like, I wonder why. What's in their best interest? And like, oh, maybe it's not. Everything isn't what it seems, And so it's been an interesting journey for me. Like I said, I try to tread the line and not be too overly political, because I do have lots of people that are on both sides of the spectrum. The political spectrum, for sure. and so, but I definitely have developed stronger opinions on that stuff over the years.
Oh, me as well, and I think it's wise that they develop as well, right? Because you're going to run into things that change your mind on different things, and like I was similar in the fact that I would have never thought that the government would be lying to me, but then I think I look back and I think to myself, as a guy who walked the streets of Baghdad fighting a war in Iraq over these weapons of mass destruction. Oh, wait, wait a second. Like clearly I was somewhere where it was not necessarily the intent, where I've now look back and go, oh, well, I have a completely different view of what I was doing in Iraq now than I did when I was walking the streets of Baghdad. Right. So I think that it's healthy to continue to develop those and challenge your thoughts and challenge your thinking and be open-minded to all of the stuff, and I found, that the more I have the conversations, with people who are willing to have conversations, because oftentimes people just aren't willing to have conversations. If they, especially, like you said, the last couple of years, it seems it's been even worse, where you can't have a conversation with somebody who disagrees with you because they just refuse, to have those, like it just they go straight to calling me a bigot or some other thing, and I'm like, no, I just want to have a conversation. I'm happy to change my mind. I'm a very logical thinker.
Yes.
If you can bring me the logic behind something and not the emotion behind something, I'm happy to change it. Like if there's a reasoning behind it, I will change my mind in a heartbeat. but it's got to be based on data and not feelings. So
That's true leadership and maturity, is being humble enough to say, hey, I've changed my opinion.
Yeah.
Like that's what it should be.
Yeah.
Like, in this election that just happened that I got to vote in, the choice was Trump or Kamala Harris. Like, obvious for me, it's so obvious that Donald Trump is going to be the better leader for this country. Like, it's not even close. But am I going to now, because this was my first ever election, be a Republican for life? I don't know. Like, it's possible that something could happen in future. Like, right now, I don't see it based on where the parties are at. But like, I need to be mature enough to have these kind of conversations where if something happens, I'll be like, hold on a minute, I've changed my opinion on this, whatever it is, and these are my reasons, and we need to love those people around us who think differently. Like, it is possible for people to come to other conclusions, and I mean, sometimes you're opposed to things, morally or for other reasons, but you still have to love people. Like, it's a commandment in the Bible to love people, even if you think they're completely unhinged or
for sure
illogical.
I oftentimes, and I'm gonna bring this back to the original question when I started this, was talking about your dad. Like, I look at this oftentimes from that perspective a lot, because I think to myself, okay, too many people, myself included, start to raise their kids based off of how they were raised or based off of what they saw, whether it was that they were running away from what they saw and how they were raised, or just doing exactly what they were told or exactly what they saw. They do that, and they don't do the critical thinking of what are the actions that I'm doing that actually are making a difference or not. Like, what things should I be doing versus should I not be? What things should I be changing my mind about, and what things should I not be? And I mean, the same thing goes in business. Like, if you just have an idea in business and think this is the only way to do it, if you're wrong, like, you're going to fail miserably in your business. If you're wrong as a dad, you're going to fail miserably as a dad. Or I should say, you shouldn't say that you're going to fail miserably, but you're going to have a rougher time as a father if you're not willing to learn more and change your mind in certain areas. So I'd love to pass that over to kind of you again, and kind of go, okay, what did you see as you were growing up that you loved and you were passionate about, and you're like, I'm totally going to pour that into my kids, versus what did you see growing up where you were like, and this isn't a bash our dad's moment by any means, but there were things I saw from my dad that I was like, no, I don't want to do that with my kids. Or even things that he was open with me later and was like, hey, I wish I didn't do that type of thing, right? So what sort of examples would you provide to kind of go down that route as you're raising your kids?
Well, it's funny how your perception of your dad changes over time. I remember being young and thinking my dad works a lot. But like, looking back, he actually changed his work hours to be there every morning for us. So when we left, he was in, whilst all three of us, left for school. Initially it was like the school bus, and then older it would be like we drive ourselves to school, whatever. But all the way through, he made sure he was available, and he only went to work when everyone had left the house, successfully, kind of thing. And so he did that on purpose to make sure he was present. But I remember still thinking, man, he gets home at 7, whatever. But he was there every morning, but I remember thinking that was long hours. But that was before I worked in London, New York, and done projects, all these kind of crazy bankruptcy projects that I worked on as a W-2 employee, where I was working around the clock, evenings and weekends. And I was like, oh yeah, Dad actually didn't work as much as I thought he did at the time. So if that's funny. What Dad did really well, he was very generous with, with like plans and when you do social stuff with school friends, he would always be the parent who's like, I'll take you. Like, do any of your friends want a lift? Like, or that's why we say you want to ride in England, you want a lift. So he would always be the parent to volunteer, and he took me to the real football games every weekend.
Real football,
yes. That involves a round ball that you kick. But he was always there at all of these games, and I'm now the soccer coach for my middle child,
not the football coach.
Oh, you did it. Oh, you got me. Yeah, so I'm the football and soccer coach for my my middle child, which is awesome. And I guess that really started with my dad being there. Dad wasn't able to be the coach. Honestly, my dad's more of a rugby guy, so he was only at my games growing up because he was supporting me, not because he loved the sport. But I think I love the sport a bit more than my dad, and so like I signed up to be the coach. So like I hope that I'm almost honoring that legacy by now stepping it up, because I am an entrepreneur and I can switch my time as needed to actually be there and do the practices and do the games with him and all his friends, you know?
Yeah, the way I've kind of talked to my boys, and it sounds like, while you didn't put these words to it, I'm going to label it a little bit, is if you ask my boys what my goal in life is, and it's to raise them to be better men than me, right? And I would like to think that all of us...
I say the same thing.
Yeah, I'd like to think that all of us strive for that, right? Not everybody does. Not every dad thinks about it that way. But we all want our kids to be successful, right? But if I'm intentional about saying I want to raise my kids to be better men than me, and now in the case of my daughter, raise her to find a man better than me, to marry a man that's better than me, then like those. The only way to do that is to hope that they improve on every aspect of what I do, which when I talk to my dad, that was, again, he didn't put those words to it, but he's like, you are in a lot of aspects doing better than I did. So he was successful as a dad. And even when I look back at it and go, man, these are the things I missed, or I wish I had this, or why didn't he do that? It's like, man, oh man, with the tools he had and the skills he had and the upbringing he had, holy gracious, did he turn out well, which in turn allowed me to do what I'm doing. I think he did a pretty bang up job. Like, I think he did pretty well. And that's why I love to talk about the dad side of dads, and like really gives us a good insight into why we do what we do, and gives us a different respect for who our parents are.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know if dad and mum have ever said like, we want you to be better than us, but like, I mean, their approach would definitely support that as something they would say potentially. And I definitely want my kids to do better than me. And so I want to make sure that I share my mistakes openly with them in whatever vertical or sphere of life. I want to make sure I'm honest, because I do think in England there's a bit of it's called a stiff upper lip mentality. It's like old school, like you don't really give anything away. There's certain topics you don't talk about. Yeah. And because of that, you do guess, some things. And so I intend to be at the right time. And again, as a Christian, I guess you want to be Holy Spirit led and driven, sensitive to the guidance of the Holy Spirit. But I hope that I am walking with the Lord closely enough to be open or sensitive to, this is a moment where I can share this, so I would like to be more open on purpose, so they know that their, mum and dad are not perfect, far from it. And actually, like, this is somewhere where we wish we'd, taken a slightly different route or done something different, so that they can be better than me or do better. I want them to stand on my shoulders.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I think that's a wise route to go. Because it'll keep us humble, right? Where are we screwing up? Because anytime kids catch things more than they're taught things, right? Things are caught, not taught. So if I'm screwing things up, they're catching that and they're seeing what I'm doing, which very well may be screwing up my goal of making them better men than me. So I want to be aware of that all the time and everything that I'm doing. So so when it comes to I want to transition now. Obviously, you worked for, it was Price Waterhouse, right? And then you decided to start buying businesses a couple years ago. How did that thought process kind of change as you were going, right? And how did your wife take to that? All right, you guys had a couple kids already when you started buying businesses. Like, how did the conversation start to flow? When did you start to get those feelings to move over to start to do business by yourself?
Yeah, I definitely think the stakes were higher. The longer you wait, the stakes just get higher and higher. My wife used to, well, she obviously works now, but she works in the home. She works incredibly hard. It's actually a harder job, I think, than what I do. But like, she no longer makes 6 figures a year, like she used to, comfortably, which is, nice income. And so then it's like, okay, well, this is all we're relying on this, And so I guess the risk was higher. I don't think I could have done it if Jordan had said, no, I'm not comfortable, because I think from that point, resentment would have built to a point where there would be bombs going off in our marriage, like all the time, because, I didn't want you to do this. You could be back in your safe job. But I feel like it's so important to marry well. Like, it's so important. Sure. And I know this is about business and dad, but like, I can't be a good businessman and I can't be a good dad if I'd married really badly and I have a wife who's just unsupportive of the fact I actually want to be a businessman. I want to be an entrepreneur, and I see a vision, and I am a visionary, but I want to go create it. Like, will you trust me? I might I will mess up, along the way for sure. But like, I'm so grateful I've got a woman who supports me in that. And, even it looks all great, like all, roses, I'm sure, online, because we bought several businesses and we live off this and it's great. And I'm really excited about the future. So the trend is fantastic, but there's been stressful moments along the way. But I think without Jordan's support from the get-go, I wouldn't have been able to do this. So like, I know that without her, this wouldn't have happened.
I'm the same. I say the same stuff about Raquel, and I always tell people like besides following God, the number one choice you can make in your life is who you marry. If you marry well, like it will do drastically better for you than picking the right job or picking the right place to live or whatever the case may be. If you marry well, it's going to make a much bigger difference than any of those other things. So I completely agree with that.
And I think some of it, like I look back and I just think about God's kindness because, in theory, like you should be growing every year. So I'm a much better man and person than I was when I met Jordan and got married. And I think now to like I wasn't like, I'm just grateful that God brought her into my life at the right time. Yeah. And again, it's like, if you're walking with the Lord, I think he can bring these things about, because mentally I was probably looking for like slightly the wrong things or whatever, like it just, but God's kindness brought us together at the right time, and it was what I needed, so I don't think it's all on us. I think sometimes you just have to like trust God that will provide what you need when you need it.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a wise decision to make. It's one of those I'm contemplating a different direction in my career path right now. By the time this comes out, I will have probably made my decision on what I'm going to do, and we could talk when we're not recording. But it's one of those things I've been talking to, seeking wise counsel, if you will, on trying to figure out what route I should be taking. And it's one of those I was telling my sister, I was like, we can easily convince ourselves that God is telling us to do something because it's what we really want. And we're like, oh no, like this sign and this sign and this thing is God telling me that I should do this. But really what it's sitting quietly, understanding, what is God actually telling us? And are we actually listening to what he has for us, as opposed to just kind of going about what we want to do? And thankfully for you and me, we both chose wisely from listening to God on our spouse side of the house. So that's a wonderful thing. So let's kind of move into, unless you had something to add there. You look like you had something to add.
No, but I mean, I think your line of questioning was around like, how did you make that jump? But that was critically important. But I guess one really important thing to draw out was at the end of my career at PwC, I was a director in the restructuring and turnaround division of PwC. And honestly, that's probably, in my opinion, one of the highest stress areas of the company. Like if a company comes in and gets in contact and it's like got no cash, it's about to file bankruptcy, you immediately have to drop everything you're doing and you have to fly to wherever the company is. And you have to start, putting together the 13-week cash flow forecast. You have to start preparing for the bankruptcy. Like all of these things you have to do for the benefit of preserving jobs and preserving the future of the business long term, facilitating a successful restructuring. And so, you ask about jumping into this world. One of the catalysts, there were several catalysts that made me finally get bold enough to be like, I want to do this. I'm going to do it. One of them was being on a job down in Louisiana. And I had a daughter at that time. So I remember FaceTiming my wife and my daughter, who was our only child at the time, and just thinking, I think I was staying at like a Holiday Inn, middle of nowhere. And I was like, I miss them so much. Like, I hate being away this much. And so, again, like it was actually an added incentive for me to think this will, like, not only do I just need to man up and be bold and just jump into what I want to do. And if it doesn't work out, fine. Like, I'll pivot and I'm sure I'll find something to do. But it was like, I'm going to be able to create the life that I really want, and I'm going to be around for my family. And that's actually essential for me. I don't think I could have built the family that I have in my mind, or the marriage I have in my mind, with me being on the road. Like, I was often away 4 days a week, but then when I was back, I'd have to work weekends and evenings as well. So like, if you combine those two together, it's not a recipe like 94 times out of 100, that is probably a recipe for the type of life that you don't want, or at least what I didn't want. So, it was actually an accelerant in a way.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I was traveling for the military after we had kids. I was like, I can't see me continuing down this path of being gone all the time. Like I want to be a present father. Like I've wanted to be a dad forever. How am I supposed to be a dad from the other side of the world, or getting sent all over the world doing all sorts of things for somebody else? If I'm going to travel, I'd rather it be for us and, or with all of us, So like recently, at the time of this recording anyways, recently, it was almost a month ago now, we drove out to Denver. Me and the boys drove from Florida all the way to Denver and had a great time on the trip. I'll say we had a great time. I don't know if my boys would agree, but I'll say we had a great time. But it was like, I want to be able to travel, and I don't mind traveling for business, but I want my family with me. I want to be able to take them with me. I enjoy being, this is a shocker for some folks. I like my family and I like being around them. So crazy enough, I'm trying to form my world around that desire is to be around them. So, and hence I talk to folks like you that really, are striving for that same exact thing. I really like that a lot.
It's a blessing to like your family. Like, it's funny that some people go to work to avoid like being around. I mean, it's almost like hard to believe, but that's the reality for a lot of people, I think. It's escapism.
Yeah. And then they'll stop at the bar on the way home to avoid getting to the family. And, and it just is like a path of it's a spiral system down into the abyss is what you're going to end up doing. It's just, you got to get yourself out of that type of thing when you're on that path. It's a path that many people have gotten off of. But many people have stayed on it too. And you end up in a much worse place. So let's talk a little bit more about your businesses. How did you kind of establish, like, hey, I want to buy businesses instead of, like, I love the book Buy Then Build. Once I learned about that book and I listened to it, I was like, this makes total sense. I want to buy a business instead of building a business. I've helped build a business in the past, and buying one, I would venture to guess, is going to be a little bit easier because I have yet to buy a business, but I would like to. So maybe you and I need to chat some more too. But how did you decide, okay, I'm going to buy some businesses and go and do this? I mean, I think you're in a perfect spot as the director of restructuring and turnaround, right? Is if you're going to be buying businesses and learning how to restructure and turn it around, that's obviously you have some skill set in that. But what was it that made you that trigger to say, I'm going to go buy businesses now?
Yeah, I was always fascinated by smaller businesses, and it's definitely startups. You have a high risk of failure, and there's it's well known now that you have this baby boomer generation. There was a huge population growth post World War II, and a lot of these guys are now retiring. Some of these people that were born in the decades after the world wars. So it's just common knowledge at this point. There are a lot of small businesses that are closing down, and that is true. We actually saved a bit. One of our companies that we bought was saved from closing down, and it's been a really good acquisition for us. And the seller, instead of closing it down, made a really good amount of money from it. This helped him. He was already kind of retired, like could retire, but it's given him a nice boost into retirement, So I just always wanted to do it, honestly, before it was super popular online. And so I don't know, I just got to a point where I just thought I could create a lot of wealth. I'm truly excited about it. Honestly, the turnaround and restructuring piece isn't that needed because you don't want to buy a turnaround. Like it can seem sexy and enticing to go after something that you could be the savior of and turn around. But like for the most part, you don't really want to go near those types of businesses. You want to go for a solid, steady business that's been around for a decade, maybe 2 decades plus. Like one of our businesses was around for 40 years before we bought it. So that's the kind of business you want because it's just long-standing, ingrained into your local community. And that massively lowers your chance of failure. It just does by buying something that's that established.
That makes a lot of sense. I often look at the businesses that need some turnaround as like a potential consulting opportunity for me, as I've done some turnaround stuff in business, so it makes sense to me for consulting. But to your point, it is a little scary if it comes to owning, because it's just like, how deep are we already, and the risks are already through the roof at this point of, like how bad is this restructure and turnaround going to end up being? Am I going to be buying myself a job by working through all of this, and like multiple jobs at that? So when you started developing your businesses, how did you kind of figure out what your buy box was to know what kind of businesses you wanted?
I think I got to a point where I was desperate to leave my job. And look, I'm really grateful for the job I had. I learned a lot, and that's actually given me amazing training. So like I work with some great people. So I want to get that out there. However, it was the travel, it was the hours of like when a bankruptcy comes in, I couldn't take it anymore. So I was looking at any business and trying to like shoehorn it into something in my Excel spreadsheet that would cash flow something to allow me to leave my job. And what's funny is when I actually bought that first one, I have a 50-50 business partner. When we bought that first one, all I needed was I was going to take 8,000 out of it a month, and then I was going to combine it with 8,000 I was getting from my real estate portfolio, which I'd slowly built up the whole time I've been working, and that would be enough for my family to live. But that 8,000 from real estate was primarily coming from Airbnb income, and we all know what's happened to Airbnb income over the last few years. It's straight down to like basically that portfolio is flat now. So it's even like you just have to, as an entrepreneur, you have to learn to pivot, and you have to be okay with like risk and uncertainty, because I made the leap and all of a sudden I'm like, hold on a minute, Airbnb income's coming down. So then we started this crazy spree of like, like honestly what we did was kind of crazy, because we bought technically 4 businesses in the first year. I mean, that's not normal. And then now we've got some additional ones as well. We have actually recently done a turnaround, because I think once you've got a track record in your local community, you often have opportunities come to you. So I often tell people, like, get those first ones done, make sure they go well, and then you have a lot of opportunities to do a lot of interesting things. But like, it's been a whole journey of like pivoting and being like, hold on a minute, we've got to pivot here, we've got to pivot here. Excuse me. But we're here, and it's, I'm happy to say that some of the earlier wobbles have ironed themselves out. Like that first business we overpaid for massively. Like objectively, we paid way too much money for it. But now as as I sit here today, it's larger, it's more profitable. We've got great customers. Like I feel really good about it. But like at the time I was like, oh boy, what have I done to me and my family? And I think there were some conversations I had with my wife where I'd made the leap and we'd been like, oh, like this doesn't look as good as we thought it was going to look. Like what is going on? Like in those early months, I've already left the shore. Like I've got to paddle frantically, and you only quit if you give up. Like you only quit if you give up. Like that is just true in, so many areas of life. Like it doesn't matter if it's your marriage, your business or whatever, your fitness, your health. Like I had to keep going there, and I could have stopped, and I don't know what I would have done. I mean, I'd have been on the hook for a bunch of debt and gone back to get a job and had to dug out of it for several years. So I'm grateful that we just kept going. And so stuff just opens up, over
For sure.
time.
So that first deal, you have the 50-50 partner, you guys go in, you buy it, things aren't looking all that great. How did you two kind of work through what was planned versus what actually happened? Because, like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan to get punched in the mouth, right? So you got punched in the mouth. How did you guys kind of regroup and move on from there?
I think for that first deal, in order to kind of make it through, I did draw a salary because I basically took the bookkeeping job. So that allowed me to like take a salary. So I was able to do something plus, some real estate income at the time was enough. But then pretty soon after we bought our roofing company, which then allowed us to take money out as well. So we almost had to double down in order to and then right in those early few months, my business partner's wife is a very successful, real estate agent in Nashville. So she was earning. So like he was like, okay, well, I won't take, money for the first few months, and I'll take a job here. So we kind of just pieced it together, honestly. You just got to make it work somehow. And then we had to double down with the roofing, which is now that's company's more than doubled since we bought it. So it slowly started to creep out of the high stress.
Yeah, and those moments where, and I'm going to ask you some questions about your business partner as far as how you found the person, but those moments that add the stress really double down on the reasons why you need to build that strong relationship with your business partner. It's the same reason why, you have to, what I mostly have done real estate is like, I always tell people, don't get a business partner that you haven't dated first, right? You're not going to get married. We're not in arranged marriages here in America, so you're not getting married without dating first. How about you don't get a business partner without dating? Who are they? What are their goals? What are they like? What are they like when they're under stress? What kind of problems have they experienced in their life that you guys can relate to? What sort of outcome do they want of the business and for the future? So how did you kind of when the rubber hit the road and the stress was there, you guys, it sounds like, did a decent job of communicating and figuring out how you were going to make it happen. So what sort of, how did you set the stage before that to ensure that when the stress did happen and you guys did get punched in the mouth, you guys had that already firm foundation to move forward on?
It's a good story, actually, because I was doing real estate the whole time I was at PwC, and like sometimes it'd be a lot of projects. So like if I was kind of on the bench, between projects, and then when I was in a project, I basically couldn't do any real estate. But I was always ticking things along, like building doors, single family rentals mostly. I had a private money lender, and he was a friend of mine. One day I asked him for some money, and he was like, I'm tapped out. I don't have any money to give. So he was like, I need you to meet my friend John, who is now my business partner. So John had sold locally, a company, and it was kind of in the construction space, but he'd sold a business, and I guess he was trying to figure out what to do with the second half of his life. And so in that interim, he was lending money, and it just so happened that we connected, and I needed to borrow some money from him for a couple of single family, like burrs, basically. Mm-hmm. So I'd done like maybe 1 or 2 deals with him, maybe 1 at this point. And then the second one that came along. So basically, I think it was the second private money loan I did with John, my now business partner. And I said, I need $140,000 for a single family rental, and, need it next week or whatever. And he's like, yeah, fine. Like we got on well, and we'd met for a coffee. It was a friend of a friend. So we had a level of trust. And, he's told me this story since, so it's fine to kind of share. But what happened was the day before I needed the 140K, I was like, closing's tomorrow. Here's the wire details. And he was like, I forgot to move some money around. Like, I've only got 100. And so I said to him at the time, I hardly remember it, but I said, oh, no worries. I'll transfer in the 40. We'll keep the loan documents as we've written it. So it literally said, like, you would probably say this is terrible, real estate investing as an investor. But I was like, we've done the paperwork. Like, you're a friend of a friend. We've done a deal together. I trust you. Like, I'll just wire in the 40 so we can actually get the deal done. I'm not going to lose this house. And then next week, just send me 40K. And so I guess he gave me 100. I had a loan document that I signed saying he'd give me 140, and we did the deal. And then he called me the next week, and he's like, I've never had anyone I've done business with like trust me like that. And he said, and he wired me the 40 back. And he said, what did he say? He said, I have found through, the ups and downs of his business career to that point that people who are trusting are trustworthy. I never thought that before, but I guess he, in that moment, thought because I trusted him, to be good to his word, that I would be a trustworthy person to go into business with. And so from there, our friendship kind of blossomed. We talked more and more about, hey, I want to leave my job. Hey, I'm asking God what on earth I should do with the second half of my life for him. We're like, let's go and buy a business. So that's kind of how it started. But I guess it was tested through an actual financial transaction, which was kind of nice. And I'm grateful for that, looking back.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I would say you're right. I would advise against that, but it worked out well in this scenario, right?
Yeah.
So it's I do suppose it does depend on the person and how things are going, because I've wired money over for folks just on a whim without any loan documents, without anything, just knowing that I trust the person, and it goes to building that relationship means a lot, and knowing that you guys could trust each other means a lot. So it's that's awesome. That's good stuff. So now you guys are in, multiple businesses together. Is that a 50-50 partner in all your businesses, or only in the first couple, or how's that work?
We are 50-50 in all of our positions, and some of those positions are 100% ownership, but now some of our positions are less than 100% ownership,
Yep.
So yeah, but we still share, we have a joint bank account. So my wife, Jordan, jokes that John is my work wife, because we basically do everything together. We're joined at the hip, and we're complete opposites, which is actually another really good trait, is to be different, very different to your partner.
For sure.
As long as your character's the same, like as in good character, then it's good that you have different skill sets.
But you can't have two alphas that are massive visionaries working together. That's not going to work very well together, right?
Yeah. like I'm grateful for my skill set, but I wouldn't want to go into business with me. I mean,
Yeah.
like what's the point? I'll just do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why they say oftentimes too, like when you're hiring somebody, you tend to hire people that are more like you. So you should find somebody like that is over the position that you're looking for to be the one hiring, because they're going to hire somebody that looks more for the position as opposed to what you tend to look for, especially as the business owners. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it tends to be. From what I'm understanding, the visionary side of the house is they're trying to hire somebody that is like just like them and has like all this excitement in these things. When really you may just need somebody who's super analytical and likes doing spreadsheets and is focused on these things and like not at all like you know?
That's true for me. Like, honestly, the visionary part, I don't have any lack in that area. And so I don't need, to be surrounded just by visionaries. I need people who are super detail orientated and just like getting stuff done, like the day to day. They get jazzed up when a problem comes in on their phone. They're like, I'm going to solve it. Like they're the people I want to have in my organization.
I like solving problems, but I'm not so good at the day to day. Like I need somebody to run the day to day. But I mean, if there's a big problem, like, yeah, if there's a problem, I'll solve it. Check out the hook while the DJ revolves it. Yes. Vanilla Ice Baby. Pardon me. Sorry.
You get, as a business owner, you will always know what the worst problems are in like basically all your businesses, but I don't want to field them in real time. Like I love having my phone on do not disturb, and it's because I'm probably scheduled out. I time block pretty much everything. So I'm time blocked. Like I try and cram all my management meetings into Mondays. Then Tuesdays, I have a big block for admin, which is like I have an ongoing list of stuff I need to get done. And if possible, I try and get someone else who's better than me to do that, but sometimes there's just stuff I can do. But then like the rest of the week, I like try and time block for things that I know need to get done or I need to think about that no one else can do. Like honestly, that is the most important thing. If you're there just filling out forms, it's not good as a business investor, a business
Absolutely
owner,
not, yeah.
because you need to be thinking about where the business is going, and that actually takes up a lot of mental energy, and it's a lot of weight as well. Like it's again, if you're coming from a W-2 position and you become a small business owner or investor, there will be a transition where even if you've made $10,000 profit that month or 20. You'll think, oh yeah, but it's not guaranteed next month. Like there's a wait. Like if that doesn't come in, I've got to make payroll. How am I going to make payroll? How much should I put into savings? All of these things that you don't think about when you just get, your every 2 weeks payment from your W-2. Like it's just a whole new world.
It is, right? Because you have that control and you have the ability, and you say, it's one of those things where I was, talking to my wife, I said, it's so much more fun to try to figure out how we can make more money than it is to figure out how we could save more money, right? Like if I could cutting expenses, not really all that exciting, but figure out how we can grow more and build more and like, okay, let's do it. Sure. Next month, maybe a little work and maybe a little tough on these things to do blah, blah, blah. But man, oh man, we could go and make this thing as big as we want to. So that's exciting stuff to me. Little freak out for some other folks. So I'm wondering, and I think you mentioned it a little bit before, but how do your parents view what you do now, considering where they're coming from England, and this is not exactly a normal thing for the Brits to be doing?
Yeah, I think they probably I don't know for sure, but I think they probably panicked at the beginning. But they were also used to me being kind of independent and just going off and doing stuff, and then being like, oh, by the way, I'm moving to New York. By the way, I'm going to quit my job. Whatever it is. They're actually staying with us now. They've come over to the US for Thanksgiving. This one we're recording. This just before Thanksgiving.
Very nice.
And so that's nice. I mean, they are very supportive. I think they sometimes ask me to, hey, can you just explain to me one more time, like what you do for a living? Because, our friends ask us and you don't know how to explain it, So like sometimes but because it's different. Like there is still the baby boomer generation that's retiring in England, but so there is still the opportunity, but it's much more compressed and reduced because less of the population are entrepreneurs essentially in England. So it's maybe harder to get your head around. But I mean, I conceived this idea of what I wanted to do in England, so it does exist. But I mean, my mum was a teacher, a primary school teacher, elementary school, for all of her career and then in retirement she became a counselor. And then my dad worked in kind of computers, IT, mainframe computers, but again for a credit union essentially, or the UK equivalent. And so that they're totally ill-equipped to give me advice on how I should put the capital structure together for deal X, but that's fine. I mean, they certainly haven't. I think some parents can jump in and almost derail because they're scared, and they then put that on you, which then derails the whole thing. They haven't done that, and I know that whatever happens, they would be supportive of. I think parents maybe try and. I mean, I actually don't want to do this. I don't want to hide my boys or my girl from pain, because I think pain can be used for growth.
For sure.
And develop them into the person that has a strong and deep character. But I do think there's always an element of I'm not saying my parents do this, but I'm sure they don't want me to go through any business failures. So if I'm company X has had a hard, quarter or whatever, they're like, oh, what are you going to do? Is everything okay? I'm like, it's fine. We'll figure it out type thing. Because business is always, it kind of looks like this, the path of progress,
for sure,
as we all know as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, when I first decided I was going to buy apartment buildings, I had told my mom, and she laughed at me. And I was like, if you ever laugh at me again, I'm not going to tell you all of my, the things that I want to do. And she was like, you're right. I'm so sorry. It won't happen again. And from that point on, she's been a strong cheerleader of just whatever it is that I want to do. She's like, I know you're going to be able to do it. I've watched you do all of these things that you said you wanted to do, and you've accomplished them. Who the heck am I to say that you can't, And I think that the desire for our parents, and even us as parents, and it's something we have to be aware of internally, is, again, to protect and make sure that we're taking care of our kids. And, when we see a risk, or when they saw a risk in us, it's easy for them to kind of want to go, whoa, 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 whoa. Did you think about this? Did you think about that? Are you sure you don't want that steady paycheck every 2 weeks with a pension and a gold watch after 50 years? No, I don't want any of that. Thank you very much. I appreciate you bringing that up, but the desire, and this even goes back to what we were talking about on the politics side, right? The desire is to help, and to be supportive. And that's the way I see a lot of things starting on the left side of the political spectrum. The desire is correct in being able to want to be supportive and helpful, but it can turn into something that really kind of just pulls people down as opposed to brings them up, if it's not utilized correctly. So, but that's great that your parents have been kind of supportive in that, and just kind of watching you on your endeavors. And I suppose after watching you hitchhike to Morocco, they were like, he'll figure it out. I think he'll be okay. So, which I am fairly interested in the hitchhiking conversation. That's interesting.
Oh man, I wouldn't. If the thought of my kids hitchhiking to anywhere, I don't know. Maybe this is a growth area that as they get older, I've got to be okay with them doing these crazy adventures and things. But I don't know. I think one interesting point to draw out, you can't fault your mum for that. Initial reaction, for example,
not at all.
Especially if she, I don't know about her employment background, but if she has been a W-2 employee. It's very hard to have a true abundance mindset. And it's not a knock against your mom or my parents or anyone else, but it's just a completely different way of thinking that things are given to you. Whereas if you're an entrepreneur and you're a seasoned entrepreneur, like you said earlier, you can double your income, triple your income. Let's drive after it. I don't know how we're going to do it, but let's make a plan and let's go after it. It's a different kind of abundance. And honestly, when I started teaching people how to buy businesses, I've only just started monetizing my community from this summer onwards. So I did it for a year and a half and basically made no money. The little money I made went back into Instagram costs because I was trying to build up an Instagram page. But someone said to me, why on earth would you teach people how to buy businesses when you could just go and buy more? Why don't you just go and do it and not tell other people? But the answer is obvious. There's so much opportunity out there. I will never be able to buy all those businesses. And honestly, I probably shouldn't as well. There's only so much debt you should take on at one time. I guess you could debate that depending on the type. But, if you have a true abundance mindset, you should just help as many people as possible. And guess what? One of those people may want to come back and be a partner at some point in the future because you've transformed their life, Yeah. Just I think small thinking bothers me a lot. I'm definitely a glass half full guy. I always have been, and I don't think I could ever be anything other than that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I've caught myself in that glass half empty mindset from time to time, and it's something that you got to slap out of yourself a little bit. But I want to transition a little bit into the kids, right? So your kids are obviously young, but what are your thoughts on the involvement in of the kids in business? Like, how have you already to this point exposed them in what you do? Like, what are they aware of that that their dad does?
I think their awareness is pretty limited, honestly. I had to get this office I'm sitting in, which isn't too far away from my house, because I used to have an office just off our living room, and then my son would come in and be like, "Daddy, do you want to build a train with me?" And be like, "Yeah, like I really want to build a train with you, but I have to make some money so our family can live." And like that's obviously hard, and so it's honestly for his benefit and mine, because my heartstrings are just like, pulled in those moments where I now work outside of the house. I want them to be involved. They haven't been that involved yet, honestly. I mean, 5.5, basically 4 and 2. But I want to be intentional about how I bring them into the businesses. One thing I have done up to now, which I'm really proud about, I do a daddy-daughter date with my daughter, who's 5.5, every Friday. And we do a variety of things. Like there's one thing she loves doing, which is there's like a coffee shop with like she goes in and she orders like a vanilla milk drink, so no caffeine, and then we'd play video games because she wants to play this video game. But like we've done a variety of things. Like I've been trying to teach her how to swing at the local park. I'm like, you can get this kind of thing. And so we get time together every Friday morning, and I don't know if she's joined the dots, but that's because Dad's an entrepreneur and he doesn't have a job like all of Daddy's friends, where they can't do that. But like at some point, I hope she'll realize that that's an intentional choice that my wife and I have made together, that I get that time with her, because, I'm relatively at the beginning of the parenting journey, but I've read and I've studied, and it seems like the more time you spend with your kid, the better the chances they're going to turn out well. And so like, okay, well, that's serious. Like we only have a few years with them, to kind of almost steward them as gifts from God. And so that's one thing I'm very proud about. And I want to be more intentional and learn from people ahead of us as I go forward. So I'm going to try to not come in with all the opinions and the ideas, and actually learn from people further ahead that have families that I look up to, because again, you got to be careful who you take advice from.
And that's what I tell people all the time too, is like, if you're struggling in your marriage, don't go to the bar and talk to the divorce guy next to you, right? That's probably the bad idea, right? Talk to somebody who's got a strong marriage, but has a strong marriage because they've been through trials, not because they've been married for a year and they're still in the honeymoon phase, but because they've been through trials and they've worked through things, and that's how they've created the strong marriage that they have.
100%.
So it's a, and again, if I see somebody's kids and they're dreadful, I'm probably not going to look to you for parenting advice. Obviously, every kid makes their own decision eventually, but if you have dreadful kids, I'm probably going to have a hard time taking parenting advice from you. So I'm completely with you on that one, which is why I created the BizDad community, is to have other dads who are around trying to gain knowledge from other dads who are, doing it better or, doing it differently, to teach you kind of how, to get real life examples of how it can be done, especially as business owners, because all too often business owners can get sucked into their business so much that they forget about the family. And that's extremely important to me, is to remember that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, you may be more familiar with the statistics, but I believe the divorce rate for small business owners is about 20% higher than the national average.
Yeah, I did not know that. Yeah.
And my business partner always says that he's seen a lot of business owners have affairs, but the mistress is actually the business. It's not, it's another human being, but it's just they're just completely lost, and they look up and they've lost their family. So, I mean, that's very front of mind for me. Like, no one is immune from, a complete collapse of the family. And so just like all humans, like, we've had ups and downs, a period of like, oh, I need to pull back here or invest more here. And I guess it's something we try to be aware of, and I hope we're continuing to go in the right direction,
Yeah.
But I think it's good to be open and not just like, oh, this will never happen to me type thing.
Yeah. Anything is possible. Everything is possible. Just be aware of all the parameters that get you to the places that you don't want to go. So you can, be wise in how you're twisting those dials to ensure that you're able to keep your family alive and running healthily. Because I saw that all too often in the military. That's one of the reasons, again, why I started this podcast, is because in the military, I saw way too many dads who were never able to actually be dads. They were just kind of, they would volunteer for the next deployment and then volunteer for the next move and then volunteer for the next, and it was like, okay, before you know it, you're divorced and you haven't seen your kids in 3 years. And it's like, that's like unacceptable to me. And then the same thing happens when you see businesses, to your point. Like I loved that analogy, a lot of the business owners have affairs, but it's with the business and not another person. So, the military did the same thing to a lot of people, and that's exhausting. It was just exhausting from the outside looking in. And I didn't even, I wasn't even experiencing that, so that's tough.
I think one of the things you have to do as a business owner, you have to be strict with setting boundaries and being good at switching off. And I go through seasons of being really good at that and seasons of not being very good at that. So, full disclosure, it's not like I've mastered it. But like you can't just be you could work for an unlimited amount of time as a business owner because there's always something to do, and so you have to be able to switch off. And so I think if you're jumping into this space, that's something you have to intentionally think about. And what does that look like? Does it mean you're on do not disturb? Does it mean you turn your phone on airplane at 5 p.m. and just go and spend time with the family? Like, what is it for you in your situation? That's something you have to think through for sure. Yep.
I think having the conversation with your spouse is also extremely important. What is important to your spouse? Like what things are there's that analogy that a lot of people have talked about where, you're juggling all of these different things, all these different balls. Some of them are rubber, some of them are glass. Which ones are the glass? Like you may think one of them is rubber, but your wife thinks it's glass. Well, then guess what? It just turned into glass. Like you have to know what is super important to your spouse and super important to your kids so that you don't drop one of those glass balls that you can, like the rubber ones will bounce back up. It's okay. But the glass ones, once they're broken, man, that's a world of hurt. So we don't want to experience those.
That's really good. I've never heard that before. I like that.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. It's been a great visual for me as I think about all the things that I'm doing. It's like, okay, like which one of these are glass? And it does make it difficult because to your point, what you were saying earlier is I have my office right here in my house, and my kids do their homeschool right here in the office with me. So, they're over there on their desk and they want to be involved, and I'm helping them out with this and I'm helping them out with that. But at the same point, it's like, yeah, but I also have to get income. So if I'm focusing all my time on this, then I can like income is a glass ball. It's got its times where it's rubber, where it's like, okay, that's no big deal, but it's still got to grow. I still got to get it going. I still got to do things to keep this flowing. So it's interesting to just kind of keep balancing that because I want so badly for my family to strive, but you can also smother something to the point where it's you lose something else. So it's tough.
One thing as well, I think as you are juggling those balls and, things drop, whatever, for example, I think I've learned to, like, you want to take responsibility for it all, basically, especially, as the husband, father, in the family, like I take responsibility. And I think, is it John Maxwell that says everything rises and falls on leadership? Mm-hmm. And so I just think that has been truer and truer for me the longer I go. So if something is suffering, maybe it's a patch where, I haven't invested as much into the marriage or the business or the kids or all of the things we have to juggle as business owners and dads, then like actually it's probably me that I didn't do the right thing. Like I didn't lead well, and maybe I was blind to it at the time, but it's still good to own up to that and say, okay, it's like a post-mortem. This didn't go well. I'm sorry. Let's go again. Again, it goes back to you don't fail unless you just give up.
Yeah. There's zero failing unless you quit. Yep. And that's what I tell my kids though, is like, it's not a failure unless you give up. So, fail and fail forward and fail often. Right. Because it's not truly a failure. Just keep failing forward, keep learning, keep growing, keep getting bigger and better at what you're doing. So, so what's next for you, James? What are you trying to, obviously you've got your community, you're still buying businesses. So, how many more businesses are you trying to buy? Like, what are your kind of goals for the next year of business?
So one thing we haven't actually talked about, my wife has been suffering with a bit of a chronic illness over the last year.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
So that's brought in some new dynamics for us as a family. And so, that's limited her. She hasn't been able to do what she would want to do, her role in the family, and it's caused a lot of cost into the family, which is obviously fine. I mean, money is there to it's but again, it's caused we've had to do some shifting of how we do life, I guess, over the last year. And so of course, I have an income goal for next year, because I think I'm starting to see that tipping point of what I've been doing and all those seeds I put into the ground with all these businesses, and some of the debt dropping off now that we've had them a few years, and some of the businesses growing. Like, that looks good. So I'm hoping there's a nice tipping point coming. So I definitely have an income goal, just as a money kind of driven guy. I think there's a lot of family stuff that we're thinking about at the moment, which is how do we support Jordan getting 100% better to the extent that's possible. And doctors say, maybe she only ever gets 80% better. That may be the target we have to think of. But I kind of reject that. And I'm like, no, she can get 100% better. You may just not know how yet. So it's, being relentlessly driven in leading the family well with that, and how to explain that to the kids. I think in terms of the specifics of business buying, like there's only so many small businesses you can buy unless you have a team that does it for you, because it's impossible for one man or two men, if it's the two of us, to be split between 40 businesses. Like there's no way for us to be able to oversee that. And so we cram all our meetings, the level 10 and management meetings, into Mondays. But I think we either go larger or we stay where we are maybe, or I'm enjoying teaching a lot. And teaching sometimes leads to an opportunity to do a co-investment as well. Like we're doing one of those right now with someone who came into the group to learn and now is doing a deal. So we're going to be a part of that deal. So I'm excited for what it is. I just don't know what it is. I think the initial sprint is done. Like doing 4 deals in 12 months was crazy, but it was necessary for us. And so it had to be done, and so I'm looking forward to having more income than I ever would have been able to make, back in my job, and structuring the family in a way where it thrives, given my wife is battling some illness that we haven't dealt with that in the past. So I don't know if that was a specific enough answer, but they're the things that are kind of flowing around, in our planning and our thinking at the moment.
For sure. And I was looking for the specificity that you wanted to give, and that's perfect. So, and that's one of those things that I recently was talking to somebody, I think it was yesterday, where, trying to figure out that balance of business and family and all the stuff. Right. And, when I'm looking at it across the board, it's, balance is much less about, I spent 8 hours sleeping. I spent 8 hours with my kids. I spent 8 hours at work. There we go. I'm balanced. It's much more like seasons, that we have, you have your 4 seasons. If the weather tried to balance in that way, it'd be 100 degrees today and 20 degrees tomorrow. Right. So, and that's not exactly how balance works. It balances over time. So what season you're in now is different than the season you were when you had to buy 4 businesses. So now you get to just kind of go, hey, the fact that I bought those 4 businesses in a year, plus a couple more after that, has helped me now to be at a season where I can support my family in the way that they need and support my spouse in the way that she needs. So I think that's a beautiful answer. It's a wonderful answer. And it's one of those that's why you're doing what you're doing, is because you do have that flexibility. And it's like, hey, these things in life are going to happen. Patrick Bet-David is a guy I really love listening to a lot. And he talks about this time where his dad was in the hospital. And he was getting in an argument about it with like the nurse or some of the attending staff, saying, "Why aren't you in there?" And they're like, "You're not paying for this. Like we've got other things going on." And he went outside really angry. Well, I think he got kicked out if I remember correctly. But he talks about how he's like, I vowed at that point I was never again going to be relying on somebody else for the income and somebody else to be paying my bills. I'm going to be driving so hard to make this happen that I will be the one controlling all of that. And when you have that drive, when you have that understanding, and when you get to a point where you're just like, hey, I'm able to do it now. I've got there. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm at a good point where I know that I can, help my family do what they need to do and be surviving well. So good on you for putting yourself in that position.
And you want to play the long game as well.
Sure.
Like the long game's so important, because I'm the type of person that has a goal in my head. So when I left my job, I said, like, I'm going to build a group of companies to do $100 million a year in like revenue. And we're about 20% of the way through that. But now, is it really important that I do the 20 to 100 million, gap? And in some ways, you got to balance it, because it would be a shame to just let that dream die on the vine, because, I want to just be with my family, or I just want to, be at home, because it's something I'm good at. And I feel like the money amplifies more of who you already are. And I think my wife and I have a pretty healthy view of what money is. And we have goals and dreams to be extraordinarily generous in certain areas.
Yeah.
And so to just lay that down because, we've got a health crisis in our family would be a shame. But it doesn't mean it just goes. It just means it no longer becomes the most important priority in our life. And initially, that had to almost be right at the top, because I needed to shoot for something like, we're going. But now it's just kind of taken a supporting role. And I'm sure it will come back at some point, and we charge again towards that, because I do think it would be a shame just to let that go. But I think once you've made a decent amount of progress, it doesn't mean you become fat and happy and comfortable and lazy. Yeah. I really don't think I'll ever be lazy. But yeah, it's just in a way it goes back to your seasons comment. There are seasons for everything, and I think you just got to be aware of what season you're in and adjust accordingly in terms of goals and things like that.
For sure, absolutely love it. All right, so James, as we're getting close to kind of wrap it up here, what things have you wanted to discuss, or what things did you have in mind, or anything that we hit on that you wanted to go in a little bit deeper on?
Oh, interesting. Well, can I ask you questions?
Absolutely. This is a conversation after all.
This is good. Okay. Well, so you said you homeschool, and so I believe you're a bit further ahead than us in terms of your journey with kids and their ages. We homeschool now. But it's really only our oldest, who's 5.5. And so we're just getting started. How has that been for you? What made you decide to do that? And how's that journey been for you?
So the decision to do it, I suppose, our oldest, when COVID kicked off, ended up doing school from home for a little while. He was only in kindergarten at the time, right? And now he's in 5th grade. But so when it kicked off, it was one of those hey, he's at home. My wife and I are both working full time. Oh my goodness, what are we doing? This is going to be difficult. Then we put him back into school again for the next couple of years. And then I got out of the military, and we moved down here to Florida. And for the first year we were in Florida, he was in a school. It was a private Christian school. Really liked it, but I caught him. That's the right. I was counting up the hours he was doing school, and it baffled my mind. And I was like, when do I get to have at that time he was, I think, 3rd grade. When does my 3rd grader get to be a 3rd grader? So he's at school or doing school work 8 to 9 hours a day, if not more, between homework and school in 3rd grade. I was like, I can't. I want him to go and enjoy being a kid. And when do I get to really see him? Because it would happen where, I would be working full time doing business stuff, and then I'd go and pick him up from school, which I was stoked to be able to do. And then I'm helping him out with homework, or maybe he had golf practice, and then I'd come home and help him out with homework. And so we're at the end of the day where we're both exhausted. We're both mentally drained from the day. And now we have to dedicate time to each other for schoolwork, when neither one of us are mentally ready and there. So it turned into just this stressful moment for both of us. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. I've got to figure something else out. So I started doing more and more research, not to mention I kept traveling for work. If it was going to go see a property, or if I was going to go, do our conference or go do something. And I'd leave without the kids. And I was like, I left the military so I wouldn't have to travel without the kids. I got to figure something else out. So that's when I really started looking deeper into the homeschool side of the house and what I could do. So my wife and I chatted a lot about it. She's still in the military. She retires next year. So I'm the one who does all the homeschool. I'm the one who works from home and does the homeschool and does all the stuff. So it was like it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort. But that was why I did it, is I wanted more time with them. I wanted them to be able to be kids. In the middle of the day, they'll go to those trampoline places, or go bowling, or go play out in the backyard, or fly a kite, or whatever, set up their lemonade stand. Cause now they have the Lemony Bros lemonade stand that they set up at the front of the neighborhood. Right. And they just get to be kids and enjoy themselves. And when I went to Denver again, I got to drag them around all over. So it's going well in so much that I get to spend more time with my kids. And I get to enjoy that. It is difficult to balance that time to make sure that I'm taking care of them in a way that they're getting the education they need, but I'm also getting the business done that I need to get done. So there is some difficult tug and pull there.
How much of the ferrying around during the day do you do? So the trampoline park, are you the one driving them to the trampoline park during the middle of the day?
No, so I've got an au pair. So so that's a game changer for us. When Raquel retires, we won't have the need for an au pair anymore. So when she retires next year, it's in line perfectly with the contract that we have with the au pair. So they're going to be done. They'll get to swap, which would be great. But yeah, so the au pair is a game changer on that. So she drives them around and brings them places, and we've got some like homeschool events that she'll bring them to. So with a bunch of the other homeschool kids and whatnot. So it's that part works out well.
Okay, very cool. And then academically, I guess that some of the concerns with homeschooling is the social aspect. And then I think academically, there's probably not that much concern around because homeschool kids tend to maybe progress a little further ahead of, what's typical. Again, these are generalizations, but that seems to be the perception, at least here. From a social perspective, how do you make sure that they are at least as good as their, public school counterparts, or maybe even further ahead?
So I'll say there's multiple answers to that. One, my kids are exposed to all ages of kids and adults, right? So and we have never talked to them like they're children. We always talk to them like they're adults. And that makes them, anytime that we talk to other adults or they have a conversation, they're like, wow, your kids talk like so well and they're so articulate. And like, it's like, even our 5-year-old is like, they're like, what? Like, I don't understand how this kid talks so well. And it's not to pat myself on the back, but it is about how I think it started with, they're really smart by themselves, but like we just communicate really well with them. Like we're always talking to them and they're interacting with all sorts of other people. So when I'm on a business call, they get to hear it. They get to understand what's going on. When I'm on one of these podcasts, sometimes they put the headphone in and listen to it. If I'm driving around in the car and I'm doing a business call, they get to hear it. The interaction with other kids their age is something that you have to be very intentional about, but homeschool has become so popular recently that there's a lot of co-ops that are out there and a lot of different things. Tennessee is one of the states that's really high on the involvement of homeschool stuff. So you can definitely find some co-ops and different groups that are going on there inside of Tennessee. It's funny. I don't know if you know who Sean Ryan is, but he's got a big podcast, the Sean Ryan Show.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
He's a former Navy SEAL and CIA operative. But recently I was just listening to him when he was talking to the guy Hegseth, the guy that just got selected to be SecDef at the time of this recording. He just got selected, right? So he was having a conversation with him about wanting to do homeschool because his kids are coming up on that age of needing to do homeschool, and he was wanting to do something like, hey, I want to buy there we go, giving me a thumbs up again on this on these images. So he was saying, hey, what I was thinking about doing was buying a property and then being able to use that property for the place that we do our homeschool, but other families can come in and join in on the property as well, to where we have multiple people now investing in said property. We all do our homeschool in the same area. We use it as an investment and be able to sell it later for a profit. To where you're kind of knocking out two birds with one stone. You're providing a place to be able to do homeschool, interacting with other kids, putting a playground in the back, be able to improve the value of it, and then sell it later. So there are all sorts of different things that you could do to involve the kids with other kids and be able to enjoy that stuff. So hopefully that actually made sense. Yeah.
No, it did. I've never actually heard. I've never thought. There's a lot of families here that do homeschooling, so we're not alone. We're part of a collective, but I had not thought about the families coming together, buying a place, all of that. That's kind of tying it in. And what's interesting, you're talking about people say, "Oh wow, your kids are so well adjusted, or they're so mature," like in a good way, not in a losing their innocence type way, which you want to protect, of course, but in terms of just how they present themselves and talk. I think something shifted for me when we moved to Tennessee. This was back when I was doing real estate investing. A friend of mine, really great guy, local to here, he's homeschooled all his kids, and I went to the title company to close on a property, and he bought his daughter with him. I think she was 12 to 15. I don't know, but I was kind of surprised to see a kid at the closing table with her dad for the closing. And as I walked in, they were there waiting for me. They were early. As I walked in, she stood up. She shook my hand and said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. And I'm here with, my dad or whatever." And I was just like, afterwards I said to my friend, I was like, "Your daughter is so together for her age. I don't know anyone who is she just held her own in a title company at a real estate closing." And then later he was like, "Yeah, it was, come to work with dad day for her."
Nice.
And he does that. He rotates all of his kids around it. I was like, man, that is so cool.
For sure.
To be able to do that. Yeah. So cool. And so slowly it started to shift. And then, my wife and I would hire some babysitters, and then, you get recommendation. You're like, they're only how old? And then they show up and they're just like, they'll change diapers. They'll put people to bed. They know CPR training. I'm like, wait, are you sure you're not 32? It's amazing. So it's just been a slow shift of like, you can get it so right if you homeschool. And I know that the stereotype is that it goes wrong, but like it seems to be pretty isolated from my experience. It seems to be the homeschool kids that I meet in Tennessee are, far ahead of their, public school counterparts.
And I think it also allows us to be, you could tailor it to whatever your child needs. Like if your child needs 10th grade math in 5th grade, then give them 10th grade math in 5th grade, right? Like they're not going to get that in public schools. Like, sure, they may be, up a grade level or two. They may be able to take some sort of, elevated class. But, but also if my kid is like still struggling with the times tables in 5th grade, okay, then I work on times tables. It doesn't matter. Like your kid gets the education they need, and you get to influence them in the other ways, right? Where we were talking about how to build this lemonade stand. It was funny. I was looking in my ChatGPT history, and there was this whole conversation that my kids had with ChatGPT about how to improve their lemonade stand. And I didn't know they were doing it. Like I gave them ChatGPTs. I built some things for them to be able to kind of do math problems with and different things to where, ChatGPT will talk back and forth with them to be able to do that. But now they started, asking it to tell stories, and they were, asking about their lemonade stand and how they could design things and all this. I was like, this is hilarious to watch how they've just kind of taken away this. They've just gone to town with this ChatGPT thing, and they love their little lemonade stand. In the 3 outings they had over there, they made like $150 from their lemonade stand, and I was like, that's really solid, kids. And then I started talking about, now, and they got to spend their time on homeschool doing it. Like one of their art classes was designing their sign. Like, sure, that's an art class. Go for it. That is one of your classes for the day, and then when you went and cooked all the cookies because they decided they wanted to try baking cookies for one of the days, okay, well, that's a class as well, right? Because you're learning about fractions, you're learning about all this stuff. Like this is all stuff that you get to do as a homeschool parent, is you can like, what is it that's going to help them for the future? What is it that makes well for what they need for right now and for the future? So I love it. It's exhausting, mentally draining sometimes, difficult, especially when you're the only one of the parents able to do it. But man, oh man, is it well worth it.
Yeah, it's so true. And I was laughing when you're saying if they're in 5th grade and you want to give them 10th grade math. Like our daughter, she's in kindergarten. So like, what level should she do math at? And math is like, one of the things I love. So we gave her a test of like 1st grade math, and she got 100% in this test. And we're like, well, that's nice. And so then I'm like, okay, she has to do 2nd grade math. But this is an area where my wife and I are developing and trying to get better at, because I'm like, okay, she has to do 2nd grade, and my wife's like, she just started school. Let's not push her too hard. Whereas maybe that's going to be the dynamic between us, where she's more nurturing. Like let her just be around contemporaries her own age. Like that's more important socially. Let's not isolate her, super early. And I'm like, she can do that already. Let's go.
Yeah.
So like, it's work in progress for us, and hopefully we'll land somewhere where one day she thinks we did a good job for her. But it is true, you can customize. Like that is important, but then there's so many different factors that go into that, and I don't think we've quite nailed it yet, but we're trying to.
Yeah, I don't think there is such thing as nailing it. I think there's again, adapt and overcome. Like what is it that happened? Where do I need to pivot? Where am I seeing that I missed the mark somewhere, so I can adjust it and fix it and move forward? So like Rourke was he's doing some of the kindergarten math, and he's just, Dad, this is silly. Like, what do we do? They barely even count over 20 right now. And he can already count to 100. He'll count by 10. So do all the stuff. Like he wants to do math. He's starting to do a lot of the, the numbers, the 1st grade math. So I've have him in 1st grade math. Like, I don't care. So now I've got an app though. What the heck's the name of it? Khan Academy. So Khan Academy is a great app that they can go and use, and then it will bring them to whatever level they're wanting to do, right? So if they're, if they could smoke through all the stuff, then they smoke through all the stuff. No big deal. They'll go on and do other stuff. So now they could be doing 5th grade level math, still doing, kindergarten level everything else, or 1st grade level everything else, but it's easily adjustable without it being like, oh, I bought the 5th grade curriculum and now I need to sit down and do that. No, like whatever they need help with, they get help with it. It's great. It's fun to watch him, because he really enjoys it, because it's a game too. So he's just going to town with his game and doing all this stuff. So it's fun.
What's the name of it? I'm just going to write it down in case we don't have it.
Khan Academy. It's either KHAN or KAHN. I don't remember now.
Okay, I will.
So there's a Khan Academy Kids and a regular Khan Academy. So I would go to the regular Khan Academy for the kindergartner, and then you can get Khan Academy Kids that the kids can just play around with the younger kids. So
I will check that out. And I heard also rumors of a tax credit for those of us who homeschool as well coming our way, which would...
So that's state to state changes on that. So I don't remember what the rules are there in Tennessee. Like for me here in Florida, I love the school choice program we have here. So like with homeschool, they give me like $7,400 a year in a fund. So I go and spend the money. So like if I go buy a curriculum and then I submit the receipts and show that I paid it, and then they pay me back for the curriculum up to $7,500 a year. So it's pretty awesome. And then if your kid is special needs in any way, shape, or form, I mean, and special needs is not like what a lot of people think of as special needs. Like there are tons of different categories that you can use for special needs, and it can increase that up to like $10,000 in a year. So it's pretty awesome. And I absolutely love it. I mean, we pay for like sports stuff. You can buy new bicycles with the money. You can buy, any sports equipment that they want. Of course, education stuff. You could buy a season pass to Busch Gardens if I wanted to buy a season pass to Busch Gardens with that, because then you could do the field trips with them and all this stuff. And it's awesome. I really like the way Florida's got it set up.
Yeah, that's a great setup. That's really great.
There was somebody voting, if I remember correctly, from that Sean Ryan show I was just talking about. They were trying to get something similar to that in Tennessee, but there were a couple people that were kind of holding off on getting it passed. So, talk to your local legislators and talk to your local folks to try to see if you can get that passed in whatever way you can. So, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I'll look into that. Yeah, for sure. I'll look into that.
All right. Well, James, it was absolutely awesome chatting with you. I'm glad again that we could finally make it happen and that my internet stuck around long enough. Funny story about the internet. I was watching that Tyson fight. Did you watch the Mike Tyson fight last week?
I actually didn't watch it.
Good. I'm glad you didn't, because it was silly. But so I was watching the Tyson fight and it kept freezing over and over again. And I had this issue that you and I had today with my internet a couple times on this podcast. So when that started freezing on there, I was like, the heck with this. And I went and I looked to see if I could get upgraded internet in my area. Because when I first got this house, I got the best internet we could in this area, and now I can get upgraded. So I ordered it right then and there, and then I hear that it wasn't the internet problem at all; it was something else. And I was like, well, it motivated me to get the internet anyway. So they're going to be here in a couple days to actually upgrade my internet and bring all the supplies I need for it. But I was like, man, oh man, it was a good motivator. But anyway, sorry, tangent.
You needed a mental excuse to do it, and so that gave you what you needed.
It was. Yeah. But thank you so much, James, for jumping on and chatting with us for a little while. If anybody who's listening wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram at BizBuyingBrit. Biz being obviously short for business, BIZ or Z.
Yes, Z.
BizBuyingBrit, and then apologies, and then businessbuyingcommunity.com, businessbuyingbrit.com, and then more recently we're going to be moving to innercircle.community, but they all point to the same thing, which is my community called Inner Circle, where I actually help people leave their jobs, but stop being realtors. We've got a lot of real estate people as well, helping them leave, buy businesses, and become full-time business owners and investors. And it's really fun. I'm really enjoying it. It's a growing community.
That's awesome. Really, I'm going to have to jump in that just because, I still have yet to buy my first business and I want to look into that. So, but thank you again so much, James, for jumping on. Thank you everybody for listening. Please like, subscribe, reach out to James for his wealth of knowledge. And thank you everybody for listening. Thank you again, James. And we'll see everybody on the next show.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you so much for listening to the BizDad podcast. We hope you found some value in your time here with us, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share so you and your friends won't miss our upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Rumble, where we continue these discussions and share more valuable content. Be the dad you know you need to be and run your business in a way you're proud to share with your kids. Keep crushing it.